talk to you today about the North Dakota Governor's Summit on Innovative Education. I attended this last week. It was June 8th, and it was held at Legacy High School in Bismarck. And I just wanted to talk about some of my impressions. So what you'll see over here, and perhaps taking the full screen occasionally, are a few photographs. I just snapped them with my iPad, and it's an older iPad, so it's, the quality's not that great, but it is what it is. And I took some notes. You'll see either full notes or close-ups of some parts of the notes. The document camera is off for this video. I photographed the notes with my iPad, and we'll just do our best. So, of course, we have a new governor this year. For those of you who don't know, his name is Doug Burgum. He was a Fargo businessman. So, kind of like North Dakota's answer to Donald Trump, only he doesn't Twitter as much stupid stuff. Sorry. But it was held in Legacy High School, which is the new high school in Bismarck. They have now 3 high schools. And I found it interesting, to get to Legacy High School, you're driving through a neighborhood that didn't even exist when I moved to North Dakota. It's a very new neighborhood, just all new. Now, I kind of expected, since it was the governor's summit on innovative education, that the governor might, actually be there. But he was in Washington, D.C., meeting with Donald Trump about the infrastructure plans. So, instead, a gentleman named Levi Bachmeyer, who I guess was a teacher, he's the education advisor to the governor now, was the MC. So, I was disappointed, especially as early in advance as we knew about this. But it kind of gives me the impression that maybe that infrastructure thing was slopped together at the last minute. I don't know. So, anyway, Mr. Bachmeyer encouraged twittering and hashtagging and so on. So there's his picture. I got better at taking iPad pictures in this god-awful setting as time went by. But yeah, there were 550 people in attendance, which was good to see. I hoped for more, but I'll be honest, I went in with very low expectations. I mean, it's North Dakota. I pretty much expected a bunch of right-wing talking points. So he introduced it, and then the principal of Legacy High School, Tom Schmidt, spoke. I found that interesting. Like I said, I had low expectations, so when he spoke, that was very good. This is an actual educator in the business talking, not some politician telling us, why we're not conservative enough, or why we need to be in favor of God in the schools or something. This is an actual principle. And he said good education is an ethical issue. Yes, I'm looking at my notes. What you need to do is deliver on what stakeholders have said that they want. So Legacy High School looked at best practices elsewhere, including businesses, as we'll talk about in a bit. One of the troubles you run into, and not just from teachers, this is from parents and students too, is we've always done it this way. I mean, have you ever had that experience where your school wants to make a change or a renovation or something, and parents will be like, well, it was good enough when I was in school there, gal darn it. What do you need all them computers for anyway? And I'm not saying computers are like a cure-all, because they're definitely not. Computers can actually make education worse. But that's a topic for another video. But teachers, of course, do that too. And students resist. They don't like changes. I mean, they're more conservative than teachers sometimes. You just change your haircut, and they're like, what'd you do that for? But of course, you do have to get your teachers teaching differently. And what he pointed out is you need to ease into it. Get rid of that idea of an instant change that, this year is the year our school turns around. No, it takes years to build the culture. I'll give you an example. A football coach where I teach, we're on our 3rd one. In the last 11 years that I've taught here, we've had a 11-year losing streak. Once in a while we'll win a game, but in there was actually a legitimate 3-year losing streak where we lost every single game, and not just by like 5 points or 6 points or something, but like 80-0. This year we actually went to the regional playoffs. We didn't make it to the state level of playoffs, but we made it to regionals, and that was amazing. And what it took was this coach working with them for a number of years. You know, the same coach, he was experienced, he had been in other schools, and just working with them and him changing the culture. And that's what you have to do in education, is you have to change the culture, and that just takes time. This year's the payoff. Ironically, a lot of people didn't like him changing the culture, and he will not be our football coach next year. So I could get an editorial about that too, but you don't care. So let's go back to Tom Schmidt, principal of Legacy High School. One example he said is, what if we take away classrooms? What if we don't say this is Mr. Squirrel's classroom? This is just room 111. So, you know, your teachers do need somewhere to work. Dickinson built a new middle school. One of the things I don't like is they took desks out of the room. Well, I'm sorry, a teacher needs a work area. So they turned some classrooms into offices, so they have a number of teachers sharing there. And each teacher, of course, has their own area to work. And the example for that was Bobcat. They have no offices or cubicles. And he said that this has improved collaboration. A lot of teachers resisted at first, but now they like it. And what's nice about it is, now, first of all, sometimes it's hard to get teachers to stand in the hallways between classes. They know they're supposed to, but they don't. Well, now they have to walk from class to class, so that worked out pretty well. And he just pointed out, you know, when you look at innovations, what's best for the kids, not what's most convenient for the parents. You know, education should be about the kids, not what's most convenient for the teachers. What is actually best for the kids? And of course, when you have a success, celebrate it and make sure people know, because that's one of the things that's happening is, yeah, you're successful, but nobody knows. Anytime you make a change, do your homework. And then he also pointed out, yes, Legacy had the benefit, you know, odd, why is it called Legacy when it's a brand new high school and totally innovative, but whatever. Yes, they have an amazing building, and they were able to build it from scratch, designed in a way to really push a new form of education. But you can innovate without that fancy stuff. I mean, Bismarck has 2 other high schools. I don't know why I'm holding up 4 fingers. 2 other high schools. There is Bismarck High, which is a 1930s building in the middle of town and very, very traditionally built. Century, which I've never been in, so I can't comment, but it looks like it was built in the 80s. But they're innovating at those schools too. Maybe in a slightly different way than Legacy, but in a way that makes sense. And so why not? It's really easy to use your building as an excuse and say, well, you know, I'm in this 1960s building and they weren't innovative then. You know, I'd love to try these changes, but I can't because it's an old building. And oh gosh, we don't have one-to-one laptops. Innovate. Start innovating. Start pushing those changes. And maybe you'll push your school to actually get those one-to-one laptops, or start saying, hey, we need to renovate, or, you know, start. And then he also pointed out that you need to work as a team. Teaching it, and I know this because I'm a teacher, it's easy to lock yourself away in your classroom, especially if you're trying to avoid some of your colleagues. But you need to work as a team. You need to communicate. You need to all be on the same page. I'm sure if you've worked anywhere, you've worked with those people who undermine anything, and they negative talk and just ruin it. So you all need to be on the same page. And really important, you need to build trust. That's kind of what I think happened with the football team, is there was no trust there. Effective, but because it wasn't the way people saw it and they didn't know what was going on, they didn't trust it, and they just started questioning it without actually knowing what's going on, because most people aren't going to bother understanding what's going on or investigating. They're just going to jump to their conspiracy theories. So yeah, build your trust, both within the school, because if I don't trust my administrator, and he says, hey, why don't you try out this new innovation? I'm going to just feel like, I'll do enough to keep you off my back, and that's it. So you need to build trust within your school and in the community. Need to be comfortable in beta, which means you're always trying new things. Some people don't like that, because sometimes you're going to fail. People don't like failure, especially in education. And of course, you have to want change. If you're ultra-conservative, good luck. So then our superintendent of public instruction, Kirsten Basler, spoke, and she pointed out 550 registered. Here's a picture I took of the auditorium, actually before it started, but whatever. She pointed out that from her prepared remarks, I mean, she was reading this part, although she got better later. This first part was just like, oh boy, this is really bad. But she pointed out that the economy is better if you have better educated citizens, because if you're a company, seriously, do you want to come to the state where a bunch of numbskulls that don't believe in evolution and gall dang science and gall dang God everywhere? Or do you want to come to the state with a very good school system? Because I'll tell you what, not only do you want an educated workforce, to get employees to want to go there, and your company officers and so on, they want somewhere where their kids are going to get a good education. She was a lot nicer about that than I was, but whatever. Our current educational model, and this is not a North Dakota thing only, this is pretty much nationwide. There are schools that are changing, but it's slow in this country. The United States just does not want to abandon this model, but it's a very industrial model. You've got one person in charge. I'm in the front of the classroom. I'm in charge. You do what I say. I will dispense the knowledge. But in our modern era, you're no longer rewarded for what you know. And I don't own a cell phone. I own this. But I've got the world right there at my fingertips. So yes, you still need knowledge, but it doesn't rank as high as it used to. And then she also pointed out, and I agree with this, every student should graduate, and that diploma should actually mean something. And then this was kind of the framework for the whole summit. She mentioned Senate Bill 2186, which is signed into law, and it's one of my links in the bibliography. And what it does is it basically gives the possibility for every school in North Dakota to be a charter school. North Dakota doesn't do charter schools. We don't do vouchers, and I'll come back to that in a bit. We don't do magnet schools. We have public schools, and yes, there are private schools, and yes, there are homeschoolers. But Senate Bill 2186 actually is supposed to make it possible for every school to innovate and waive requirements that are in law. So, like I said, I'll come back to that. So then we got a pre-recorded message by Doug Burgum, because he couldn't be there, our governor. Wasn't much to it. He just says, reimagine, keep your human relationships, information's online, create a culture, creative curiosity. North Dakota, we can't have diversity. I mentioned the Khan Academy, which I actually, one of these days I'll have to talk about the Khan Academy. I have some issues with Khan Academy. And he's pointed out that, true, we are entering a world of perpetual disruption. Everything is changing. I don't think my students are going to live in the world that I've lived in. A lot of us don't realize it yet. So, done with him. And then, at this point, I'm just like, okay, yeah, it's the rah-rah, now what? So, one of the speakers was Ted Dintersmith. Now, you may have heard of him. His talk was called Why North Dakota Can Out-Finland in Education. He is behind the film Most Likely to Succeed. And I've got links in the bibliography to his TED Talk. in Fargo, actually. And to the trailer in an interview about his film. What he did is he looked at, what's wrong with education? Why is his daughter being turned off on education at a very young age? And so a big part of his movie was about exploring a place called High Tech High, which is a really innovative high school in California. Now, to get to the level of High Tech High in North Dakota is going to take some time to change the culture, which is what most of this presentation, his and all the other presentations, were about. So, yeah, I would check out Most Likely to Succeed. We watched it at my school. I'll have to talk about that too sometime. There were some staff were like, yeah, why not? And other staff were like, yeah. Okay, sorry. But he pointed out that education is local. We can't just copy Finland. Now, Finland, he brings up Finland because Finland is a surprisingly successful education system, all with public schools, by the way. And, but we're not Finland. What works there may not work here. So, we need to innovate in a way that works for us. I live in southwestern North Dakota, so we're ultra right-wing, ultra traditional. So we have to find a way to get good education to our kids in a way that our kids and our community will accept. I guarantee we try a high-tech high here, it'll be a failure. So he had a Finnish teacher he'd filmed. He asked to give some advice to North Dakota. This Finnish teacher, it was a little film he put in there. He said, curriculum should be based around real-world problems. You really need to prepare teachers and principals, and that's one area I think we're lacking in North Dakota, is we're not doing the in-service and stuff that we need. Now, I think there are a couple initiatives, and I'll talk about one of them later in North Dakota that is trying, but overall, we're not doing it. I mean, locally, I'm not seeing it. And I sought it out. It needs to be there for every teacher. And then the last one, 3, make sure kids can collaborate. They actually need that culture. We need to learn to work together. And then a little bit about Finnish education. They're getting rid of subject areas. Interesting. 5-hour school day, and it's very local. So if you want to look at a different way of doing things, look at how Finland does its education. Very different from the Asian model of education. And one of the things he pointed out is that more and more jobs are going to be replaced by a computer and robots. There are combines now. I'm in an agricultural state. There are combines now that are self-piloting. They can just do the field and they don't need a driver. And oh my God, I mean, maybe it's because I'm not a farmer, but I just can't imagine sitting in a combine for day after day, driving around a field. Oh, end of the row, turn around. End of the row, turn around. Oh, dump the grain. Horrible. Or truck driving. God, that would be an awful job. Or driving a train. You don't even steer a train. So more and more jobs are going to get replaced by computers and robots. What do you do for employment? And he also pointed out the real world is messy. It's not just a world of STEM education. Some people are like, we just need to get rid of liberal arts because that just prepares you to work at McDonald's. What's liberal arts major say? You want fries with that? Well, actually, the liberal arts give you a lot of creativity. And one of the things that's missing from some of the traditional way STEM has been taught, science, technology, engineering, math, is that creative aspect, that communication aspect. And so I thought that was good that he brought that up. But what we're facing in this state is inertia. Even pre-service teachers fight it. He had a panel. Every one of the speakers had a panel. And they talked a little bit. And I will actually put copies of my notes up on I'm not sure how yet, but I'll put them on. And one of the questions was from a professor who teaches pre-service teachers, and she says they don't want to try anything new. They just want to teach from the textbook. Current teachers, of course, we're very locked in our ways, myself included. I try to change, but it's glacial. I mean, yes, when I look back at my first year teaching and now, I've come a long way, but I'm slow to change. And I'm getting to be older. I'm actually one of the older teachers at my high school now, and I'm only 41, so that's a little scary. So yeah, you're fighting current teachers. You're fighting students and parents. We always did it this way. You're fighting administrators. There's a lot of administrators that don't like change. I remember, oh, it's been years, but my principal came to do my evaluation, and I was going to have the kids do a lab. So he says, oh, I'll come back when you're teaching. By which he meant when I was lecturing. Because that's teaching. Labs are just something you throw in for fun to keep the kids from getting bored in your science class in his eyes. Seriously. So yeah. And administrators, some of them really panic when parents say, what's that there teacher doing? And go, dang, doing projects instead of that there tests. And actually, we have to fight a lot of institutions. You know, colleges expect a certain type of transcript. College admissions look at certain things. So if we get too non-traditional, they're like, whoa, what's this integrated math? Whoa, what's this project thing? What's this senior capstone? That's not in our template. But if we're going to do any changes, you have to build that trust first. And that's actually one of the later speakers, Suzie Wise, talked about small hacks is where you start. So I'll come back to her. So anyway, that kind of set the scale. And he had a speaker, and then the panel discussion, and then a couple audience questions, not very many. So then the next speaker was Ken Kay. He talked about your 21st century graduate. And he suggested, you know, he had actually a website, which is one of my links in the bibliography. What is your profile of a 21st century graduate? And then he put up a slide, and of course, I'm not sure about the copyright thing, so I'm not going to put it up. But it was a profile of two students. Student A had all the traditional subjects, you know, it's the social studies, the algebra, you know, those were all listed. The other one listed more specific skills. Collaboration, teamwork, and I don't have the slide in front of me, but, you know, and he said, who would you hire? And when you start thinking about it that way, when you tell me, well, I took American history in high school, what's that tell me about what you can do for my company? What's that give you the ability to do? And by the way, none of these people are saying, no, let's not teach American history, let's not teach the subject areas. What they're saying is we need to rethink it. So he actually summarized it. Well, he had another slide, the top skills for 2020 that employers are looking for. He called it the 4 C's of education. Critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity. There were a couple teachers saying, I've never heard of this before. What is this nonsense? And, well, I was in a small group discussion later, and one of the teachers said, well, how are we supposed to find time to teach all this and our subjects? How do we do that? And, you know, the idea is you're doing them at the same time. You know, instead of expecting that the kids are going to memorize it because you lectured on it, you're thinking, how can I get them to learn the material through these other ways? And by the way, he quoted Apple Computer. Somebody at Apple Computer told him, people who need to be managed are no longer employable. If you're not self-motivated, if you can't work well with others, if you need to be told, do this, now do this, now do this, you're not employable. And if you think about people, whether you're an employer or whether you're an employee, the people at your workplace that need to be told to do something, and if they're not told what to do, they just stand there helpless and just, you don't want them. Who wants them? So I agree with that. And again, he also mentioned the inertia. Our school is the old model. It was good enough when I was a kid. And the policy, the law, the standards at the state level are very slow to change. This state, we had a crazy nut thing over Common Core. I don't think 3/4 of the people opposing Common Core even knew what the hell it was. Especially when you started reading the reasons for opposing it. So then Kirsten Baszler, I guess that was her turn to jump in. She had a small talk on Senate Bill 2186. The ideal is, it gives every school the ability to be a charter school, but we don't have the ugly baggage that goes along with charter schools. Because I'll tell you what's behind charter schools and vouchers. The idea behind those is to kill public schools. Starve them of funds. Make it impossible for them to provide an adequate education. Then you can turn around and say, see, public education's a failure. That's what's behind those. So this Senate bill, and see, the charter school can just waive different requirements. The public school can't. So what this does, supposedly, is it makes it possible for every school to be a charter school without that ugly baggage. Now, the hang-up is DPI has to approve it. We're having trouble where I teach with approval over a new type of English class we want to offer. So, I'm curious, speaking personally, to see how serious North Dakota actually is about innovating. Because we have to overcome that inertia at DPI to try out an innovation. But it was actually written by educators, this bill. Legislators, of course, refined it, so maybe that's where some of the limits come from. One of the legislators, which if you see my written notes, gave the example of a silo. He said, we're all comfortable inside the silo. It's kind of scary on top where you can see the future, and you need local support to get to the top of the silo. If you don't have local support, good luck innovating. And of course, it's going to take a lot of patience. We always expect, why didn't it work? When this new football coach, back when he was new, was hired, he was criticized so heavily. Well, we're still losing. Yep. It takes time to change that culture. And sometimes you just need to get rid of those older football players that have got that culture of failure. And he's still gone. One of the things one of the panelists mentioned is North Dakota is small and nimble. We're not a high population state, so it is easier to change things. But what was useful is they had a superintendent of Northern Cass School speak. He talked about how you need partners in other districts. Then he talked about some of the things they're doing, customized learning, blended learning. He wants to get rid of grade levels and just meet kids where they're at. Overall, no more excuses. And then they opened it up to audience questions. And just like here, I have bright lights that you can't see over, well, you can't see my fingers either there. And it's dark on the other side. It was even darker in that auditorium. The panel couldn't see who was asking the questions. They just heard the voice. Well, he had a clerical collar on. He was a Catholic priest. So I'm pretty sure he came from one of the Catholic schools in North Dakota. Now, a lot of those have closed down just for lack of kids and whatnot. But the ones that are there, they're there. St. Mary's in Bismarck, Trinity and Dickinson. I can't remember all of them. And I don't know which one he was from. But he wanted to know about vouchers. Because he's like, well, the private schools want in on that money. And they always pat themselves on the back for how much better they are than those lowly public schools. And there's a certain element of our population that likes that idea, and they forget what it is that makes the private schools sometimes seem to be better. And I'll tell you what. Now, I think St. Mary's is okay. I have a few issues with Trinity. There are a couple private schools in this state I would never want a kid to go to. Crazy stuff going on at those. And I'm not going to mention names because I know better. But, he was looking at money. Private schools want some of that state money. So if you have vouchers, you can get some of that state money. And that opens up a whole new can of worms, because do you want state money going to a school that now, Catholics, no, they don't do creationism. But do you want that state money going to one of the private schools in the state that does do creationism? And then there was a legislator in the audience who sounded really bitter, actually. She says, well, what do you do about those parents that just don't care? Well, that's been a problem in education forever. And what they told her is exactly what I would have told her. They will always be with us. You control what you can control, which is what happens within the doors of the school. What happens outside, you can't control. Which is not a pleasant answer, but it's the truth. So then we did a breakout session for lunch. There was a main breakout session in Legacy High School. Has a humongous commons area. I guess they use it as a cafeteria. And then there was a smaller breakout session for those of us from the rural schools. And I'm from a rural school because my school district covers an area bigger than the state of Rhode Island. We only educate about 450 students K through 12. So, yeah, do the math. So I went to the rural school breakout session. There were some interesting things there, just not as many as I thought. One of the things that rural schools are facing in this state, nobody wants to teach here. We have an opening right now for an art teacher. Nobody wants to do the job. When we advertise for an opening, we get 1 or 2 applicants if we're lucky. We ended up eliminating a special ed position because we just couldn't get any applicants. When I applied for my job, I was the only one. It's that bad. Beulah is actually trying a grow your own, as a solution to teacher shortages. People who are from small towns are more comfortable with them and maybe more likely to return to them. But yeah, there were no real answers on the teacher shortage. Everybody wants to teach in Bismarck and Fargo. If they can't get a job there, they'll work other jobs and substitute till they can get a job there. Or if they're really desperate, they'll live in Bismarck and they'll teach at a rural school near Bismarck so then they can get into Bismarck as soon as there's an opening. That's what's happening. I mean, that's the reality. People do not want to go to small towns. I'm weird. I'm in one. And sometimes I wonder why I'm in one. We heard from a superintendent from Richland, which, interesting. They're doing project-based learning K-12. He pointed out that they had to start slowly. I imagine Richland is on the eastern end of the state. There are a lot more, what's a good word for it? More invested in education, more innovative out there, something like that. But he said they had to start slowly. One of the things with these projects is have a public exhibit, so there's some accountability there, more than just to the teacher, because a lot of kids, it's easy to just say, oh, take a 0 on it. So if they pass, I don't care. But when they know it's going to be exhibited in public, they're just like, oh. I'm not sure what they do with this, but he talked about how they have K-12 houses that work together. Houses, Richland is in 2 different towns. But houses are like a group of students, K through 12, that apparently do stuff together. I don't know how it works. He was rather vague on that. He talked about capstone projects for seniors. In fact, he mentioned that they're trying to move their classes younger so that they're creating adults senior year, which is one of the things that's missing in traditional education. He said, ideally, we don't even want them in the building in their senior year. And that's true. We are creating perpetual children that are waiting to be spoon-fed and managed rather than people that can direct themselves. And most of the staff, the school board paid for this, which blows my mind that, wow, they are actually serious about this at all levels, to visit High Tech High in California. And overall, one of the things that came out is use your school website, let the public know the good things you're doing, which we don't do often enough. So instead, Mama is mad at the math teacher, and she gets on Facebook, and Facebook's all her friends about what a crap hole the math teacher is. And next thing you know, there's a whole bunch of outrage about something that never even happened, and they're just like, oh, school here sucks. We need to combat that with, this is what we really are doing. Now, sometimes there are things you just can't share. There are discipline issues that happen in school, and parents are like, well, that was handled badly. And it's just like, if I could tell you the whole story, you would understand, but I can't because I got to protect privacy. And that's something parents just don't get until it's their kid whose privacy gets disrupted, and oh boy. But anyway, so we came back. There was I'm not sure where they were from, but a Native American group that was doing, they had, first they did a welcome song, which is the one I will play here. And then they did boy, I wish I'd written it down what the other one was. Okay, so following them was Suzie Wise. She's from Stanford University. Her big thing, and you'll notice in my notes, hers a lot shorter. I was either getting tired or it was just less content. But she said her talk was quick wins to put students at the center. One of the big things is her shadowy student challenge. Follow a student around all day. Find out what their world is. Sit in those uncomfortable student seats. Yeah, they are uncomfortable. Sit for period after period, writing down notes while a teacher drones on and on, lecturing. Sit there while the teacher yells at you. We forget what that's like. I thought that was very good. And she said some of the important mindsets are just a bias toward action. You actually want to act rather than whine about it. I always hate those people that complain, but, oh, no, I'm not going to offer a suggestion. I'm just going to complain. Start small. That's how you build your trust. And you get the culture started that way. And she said, don't be afraid to fail. Fail forward, learn from it. Oh, yeah, we don't like failure in education. Because then the school board and the principal are like, see, I told you, old ways are best. Some of them, and then when you're trying to change the culture, there are some things, this goes back to that question from earlier, you can't control. You can't control behaviors. You can't control mindset. Now what you can control is what the space is like. Maybe don't have your desks in your classroom arranged in rows. Maybe put in tables. What events do you do? How's your schedule work? Finance, within limits, obviously. The process of education, the roles everybody have, the rituals, your incentives, your communications. Those are all things you can control, so do it. And as she said, we need to get people away from this heavy, including colleges, because we have to get the colleges to buy into this heavy focus on a GPA. I have students who won't take chemistry or physics because they don't want to mess up their GPA. It's too hard. Never mind what you could learn from the class. It's just about that grade. And then they come back. Why didn't you prepare me for college? Yeah, so grades, dirty secret of education. They don't measure what people think they measure. And really, and this is me talking now, your best students are good at school. They're good at school the way it is. They don't want it to change. They're the ones that are going to resist you. And I've found that. And I've only made small changes, but yeah, they're the ones that resist. I had a student flat out tell me that labs are a waste of time because she can learn more from taking notes from my lectures. That's not the world. That doesn't build the mindset of science, that ability to synthesize information. And just, oh my God. And another thing she pointed out, early adapters are the ones that get the ball rolling. Yes, you need a leader to start it, but it's your first adapters that are going to actually get other people drawn in. If I can find it, I'll put a link. There's a neat video about leadership that points out that leaders aren't so important. It's that crowd that first starts adapting it that really gets everybody else in. And then she left the whole thing with a question. Would you want to be a student in your own classroom? And I'll tell you, I'm better now, although I still have a long ways to go. I would not want to be a student in my classroom my first few years teaching when it was all lecture. Ugh. 50 minutes of just copying down what Mr. Squirrel writes on the board. I could fill that board 5 or 6 times in a 50-minute period with my notes. Ugh. All right, so I said that North Dakota, the resources are starting to appear in this state. One of them is a National Math and Science Initiative. This is a national program, basically on how to teach math and science, but they also include English in it. Now, his talk, this was Marcus Lingenfelter, was selling his program. I'm, full disclosure, I won't be teaching chemistry next year, I just found out today. But over the winter, when this program was offered, I signed up for the 3-year program in chemistry. So, yay. But hopefully I can pull something away from it. And worst case scenario, I can put up my resume when I go teach somewhere else. But he did have a few good questions. One of the things he says, why is it okay to say, I'm just not good at math and science? Do you go up to people and say, I just don't read so good. Them words, they're just too hard for me. That's not okay. You immediately say, well, you're stupid. But somehow it's okay to say that in math and science. So I thought that was a really good point. He also pointed out, and this is true, you can read the news, Canada and France are both after our scientists now that we have a science denier as president. And a lot of science deniers, well, EPA is run by a science denier. They want our scientists. And according to a study his company did, half of our high schools are what they call STEM deserts. You just can't get a good science, technology, engineering, math education there. And North Dakota has a big wave of retirements coming. We're actually going to lead the nation in the need for STEM jobs with a Bachelor of Science in a STEM area. Maybe not the STEM area that, say, California would have or Vermont would have, but STEM. And he also pointed out that AP, which is advanced placement, it's for those of you not in the U.S., you can get college credit for taking AP courses. It's a proxy for your state STEM workforce pipeline. North Dakota's near the bottom. We don't have AP courses where I teach. I'd like us to. We don't have them. I've tried to push for it, but but then they say, well, look at your numbers. Nobody's taking your advanced classes. Scary. And then he also pointed out that CERN, CERN, actually looked at being located in Texas. They went to Switzerland instead. Why? Because the lack of an educated workforce in Texas. It's real. We are losing out because of our lack of an educated workforce. There was a innovation panel after that. Now there's a timer on this camera so I can see this is going on forever. So I have a whole outline of that. I just did it in columns. So I'm just going to get a couple highlights, but they brought back all the presenters to speak there. Things like how can we build a common understanding? And we have to build the culture. It takes a while. What did they like about North Dakota? One of them said, it's vibrant and innovative. We're willing to step into the unknown, which was interesting to hear, but maybe I'm too locked up in my one little area. Apparently the bill has a good policy environment. Ted Dintersmith said North Dakota can send a signal to the country because we are small and we can actually change fairly easily compared to some states. And the No Child Left Behind bill, of course, is the old system. Then they asked about what do you say to skeptics? This is fluff. If you read much about education, you'll hear we need to get back to basics. Back in the 50s, we had a good education system. He pointed out that some people just like to be grumpy. Need to immerse people in it. We have a new culture of collaboration. And, we're good at doing it the old way, but it just isn't working anymore. Because the rest of the world is moving on. It's a global economy. Let's see. Roadblocks. They talked about school biases, low expectations, adults behaving badly. Sometimes you just get opposition to an innovation without any research. And we need to, college admissions need to value what's actually valued in the real world, not this PhD pipeline. I'll tell you, my own, of course I went to a very right-wing college, but my own education experience there is, there were a few that talked about the classroom, but a lot of my education preparation was preparation for getting an advanced degree in education. It wasn't for helping me be a good teacher in the classroom. Personal experience. And it's really easy to say, I'd love to innovate, but is that what the colleges are looking for? Especially if they're not. What's missing in North Dakota? A teacher pipeline. Like, we have a teacher shortage. Yeah. You'll say, well, Bismarck has no trouble. There's more elementary graduates than there are positions. True. Let's look a little deeper. We don't have enough science teachers. We don't have enough math teachers. All the specialized subjects, we do not have enough. So overall, yes, we have more education graduates than we need. Why aren't they going into these different subjects? In our high schools now, every single subject area is a shortage area. Why is that? Why are we allowing that? Why don't people care? And then, of course, we need to be patient. That's a challenge. And I could keep going, but those are the main ones I wrote. And then we did a small breakout session, which... honestly, that was disappointing. It was a small group discussion, and basically one teacher dominated it, and what was the point? It was just to answer her little questions, and so we came back for the closing remarks, and I'm looking at my notes thinking, do I say this or not? I'm going to say it. What the hell? I was really disappointed to walk into that auditorium that was full in the morning, and it's almost empty. It's like everybody said, oh, I've had enough of this. Let's go home. I don't care about education in North Dakota. I mean, I'm a teacher and everything, but who gives a hoot? That's honestly how I felt, and I just thought, yeah, how's that look to your... I mean, seriously, don't you see the thing through? Do you expect your students to say, eighth hour, it's the end of the day, who cares, I'm going home. I had enough learning for today. No! So why is it okay for a teacher? Well, honestly, I think teachers are some of the worst students, which would be another topic for a video one of these days. But, the basic summary was start with small hacks, and start innovating and stop worrying about regulation. But as I said, apparently the state doesn't want us to innovate with our English too much. And I will just add that more important than your leaders is your first adopters. They're the ones who are really going to get the ball rolling. They can even steamroll over a bad leader if they do it well enough. So, I'm glad I went. I went there expecting a bunch of right-wing talking points, a bunch of vouchers and God and Jesus and stuff, but, I was pleasantly surprised. They had some very good talks. What we need now is a lot more specifics about here's how to do it. Now, yes, each school needs to innovate on its own, but that's what we need is that leadership and that education saying, here's how to do it. We need to have our in-services statewide for teachers being about project-based learning and the 21st century graduate and how to integrate these critical thinking skills into the curriculum. True story, Texas, the Republican Party actually opposes teaching critical thinking. It's in their platform, or at least it was. I will put a link in case you don't believe me. Is that what we want to be? So we need to move forward. We need to get away from this idea of testing, and better education means more lecture, more testing, more double down on them. We need to get away from this traditional idea of how education looks. I watched a talk a while back when the lecture model started. Let me just grab an example. Oh, I grabbed a calculus book. That'll be fun. Here's the book in the classroom, and I read from it to my students, and perhaps I look up and speak, and they write notes and so on. The variable area then approaches a limit, and this limit is defined as the area of the circle. So they're copying it all in their notebooks, because era before printing presses. Eventually, every student had their own book. Lecture roll changed. Now I'm going to summarize it for you. Let's transform that model. Let's have the students engaging with it and using it and doing things with it. And let's start saying, how much do we need the students to actually memorize? How much can they just look up? I mean, all those integration methods I learned in calculus, I haven't used them since I taught calculus. Why? I have a TI Inspire that can integrate for me. And yet I have students who can't intelligently use percentages for an actual application. Yeah, maybe they can do the rote process of calculating a percent. But when you actually have to use it for something, that's elementary school level math. That's what I mean. We need to rethink that. Instead of all these skills that they're going to forget, let's have them actually use them for something. Isn't that what we want? And so I'm going to try to be a first adopter. And I'll report back here occasionally what I'm trying. I got to start small. I'm in a very conservative community that, they've been mostly okay with things I've done so far, but I got to tread carefully and slowly where I live. But I want to see the education change. And so invite you along on the journey, and I'll update you from time to time. So I hope that was interesting, hope it was useful, and I am so sorry that this whole summit is not online. They live streamed it, apparently didn't record it to for people to watch later. And I wish they would have, because there was a lot of good information there. So, hope that was interesting. Hope it was useful. And we'll see you later. Bye-bye.